And it's important to ensure that your attempts to deal with these cards don't break up your fundamental strategy.
Absolutely. So if we look at Richard Feldman's sideboard to discuss this, his sideboard has no answers to that at all.
All right, and he is playing against Nick Becuar, who is playing, once again, Counterbalance. And in fact, it looks to be card for card the same deck that Todd Anderson was playing in the previous round. Though his sideboard, interestingly enough, does not have those Ley Lines of the Void.
That's fair. Now, Richard's other argument with this is that essentially they won't draw their sideboard cards and you can just beat them. So...
All right, so players are shuffling up.
Richard's sideboard, the cards he has: 4 Firestorm, 4 Leyline of the Void, 3 Winds of Change, 2 Elish Norn, 1 Angel of Despair, 1 Ichorid.
All right. So Nick Becuar's deck is, as we saw from Todd Anderson, it is a counterbalance deck with Punishing Fire. Punishing Fire is actually pretty interesting because it is a card that can actually matter pretty significantly in this matchup. It doesn't seem like the sort of card that would, but Richard Feldman's deck is far more based on Bridge from Below than it is on Dread Return.
Absolutely.
It is based around grinding out your opponent by generating lots and lots of zombie creatures. And he only has 2 copies of Dread Return and no actual Dread Return targets in his deck. Nothing that's, no...
What do you mean no Dread Return targets? He's got Golgari Grave Troll.
He does. No creatures that are in his deck for the sake of being Dread Return. You see a lot of Dredge decks that have, whether it's Flamekin Zealot or Angel of Despair or Elish Norn, any of these creatures in their main deck. Richard, none of them. His deck is built around purely grinding his opponent down through the value of the creatures he's getting from Bridge from Below.
Now, Richard Feldman, who's not... There he is. Richard Feldman, he kind of, to me, looks a little bit like Louis C.K. Okay. He's not as funny, but he's a pretty funny guy. We see a Gemstone Mine. Oh, Gemstone Mine, how do I love thee. This card is probably older than some of the people out there watching.
And I've played many of them.
Yep.
Back when they were first printed.
Careful study from Richard Feldman. One of the problems with being Richard Feldman in a Legacy tournament, if your opponent reads it all, they will know what you're playing.
Yeah, that is definitely something that is true of a lot of players who sort of stick to their guns.
Yep.
And, I mean, I certainly know that if I sit down from...
Force of Will from Nick.
Oh, Force of Will from Nick. If I sit down from, anyone who is aware of my preferences, they're going to come to expect that, I'm probably playing in Legacy some sort of Knight of the Reliquary deck.
Right.
There's actually Patrick Chapin joked that at Pro Tour Philadelphia, I think it was actually Patrick Chapin and Matt Sperling said that they'd give even odds to anyone who wanted to bet whether my deck contained Elspeth and Knight of the Reliquary. They would have won.
And we see a fetch from Nick Becuar, and that is a tropical island. And we see a Sensei's Divining Top from Nick. There we go. Nick Becuar playing Counterbalance. And we believe this is exactly the list that has been circulated by Jerry Thompson. We see a Putrid Imp, I believe. I think I saw they get countered there. And
one of the crazy things about Dredge is that it really just completely ignores the basic mechanics of Magic. This is one of the reasons that lots of people really dislike Dredge as a deck. And you look at what's happening here. Richard is winning this, is generating a huge advantage here through just throwing cards in his yard. All he's trying to do.
Narcomoeba is right there at the very end there.
But does he have any bridges?
He's still got one more to go.
Well, there's a
Dread returns. 2, 3, 4, 5. That's all of them.
I don't see any dredges, and I'm not sure I even saw an Ichorid. So he has 2 Narcomoebas, and there's a Dread return, but that's it, I think.
Breakthrough there. I think that was a... breakthrough for 0, I'm pretty sure, which would mean that Richard Feldman's hand would be empty. And now, He puts his chin on his hands and says, "Go."
All right, well, that was a huge dredge from Richard Feldman, but he did not get much. He now has 2 1/1 flyers.
Dread Returns is in the yard.
And I mean, he has a bunch of dredgers, but nothing as far as action is concerned. That is a Cabal Therapy, I think.
Richard playing 4 copies of nearly everything in the deck, excepting 3 Icarid and 2 Dread Returns. A grand total of 15 mana in Richard's deck.
Including the much maligned Tarnished Citadel.
Tarnished Citadel, for those of you who don't know, is the bad version of City of Brass. 3 damage from Tarnished Citadel. Now, it can, however, not hurt you if you make colorless.
Which this deck does not have much use for. So,
Nick lays a Scalding Tarn. It's turn 2 here.
did Richard just basically spend that time deciding if he was going to Cabal Therapy?
I think Nick actually spent some time thinking,
Oh,
because
okay.
he had open mana.
Gotcha.
And then he Sensei's Divining Top. End of the turn, there is an Icarid in the yard.
All right.
Icarid comes in, and goodbye to a Putrid Imp,
All right.
the most useless card in the graveyard. And now he's thinking about what to dredge. I don't know. Did we see a Golgari Grave Troll?
I believe so.
I didn't see.
I don't recall it, but it looks like not.
And it looks like he's thinking about a Thug here.
Thug Life.
Thug Life.
Dredges.
There's a troll. There's a... okay. A bridge from below and a troll.
Was it a bridge?
Yeah, there was a bridge. Not a bridge. Yeah, that was a bridge. That was a bridge.
Maybe I missaw.
We'll be able to see in a second when Nick fans.
Yeah,
there it is, the bridge.
Okay, so troll and bridge.
Bridge is actually another card that offends me.
Yeah, that is I think my least favorite Magic card.
I think that bridge from below, it really ought to have some ability when it's cast.
I completely agree with you.
You know, actually, what I wouldn't mind is if bridge from below said something like black, 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 had its text, and then had a line of text that said this effect is in play even in the graveyard.
Yeah, something like that.
It would, yeah. I mean, yes, I'm actually making bridge from below stronger, but
right. It's just a card that it's just sort of offensive to the general idea of what Magic is about. Like,
exactly.
you cast spells, they do things, you interact. It's like, no, this goes my yard.
There aren't very many cards that offend me. Bridge from Below is one of them. Blightsteel Colossus is another one. We see a Punishing Fire here from Nick Becuar.
The Punishing Fire is going to kill.
This is during the draw phase, and it kills a Narcomoeba, replacing it with a zombie.
Interesting. I'm not sure what that accomplishes exactly.
He's like, what does that Bridge from Below do?
So he's trying to... Now he's figuring out what bridge... Yeah, this is one thing that I think actually is in the favor of dredge players everywhere, is that there are a lot of incredibly subtle interactions that involve bridge from below and timing, things like that a lot of players aren't particularly familiar with.
You know, I think another thing that actually is to the benefit of Bridge from Below of dredge players is that most opponents that play against this, there are so many different small little ways that you can build dredge, right? Mm-hmm. And then he casts the Thug, sacking it to Cabal Therapy, that you can play against 2 different dredge decks, and the approach of the 2 players and the 2 actual deck lists can be different enough that you actually might not know how to play against them properly.
Right. There are definitely fundamental differences even within the very basic shell of dredge.
And he sees a Tarmogoyf in Nick's hand, and it's just land. Coast is clear. This is room for a huge Grave Troll to come out.
All right. Time to troll.
Sack.
That's the Trundle voice from League of Legends.
He doesn't go for the troll.
Really?
And Nick scoops.
All right,
he knows he can't actually beat that without some
Yeah.
sort of miracle draw.
All right. Well, Richard Feldman up a quick 1-0, and now this is where dredge decks live and die. The sideboard. And interestingly, Nick's deck is not particularly well set up against Dredge. He only has 3 copies of Relic of Progenitus in his sideboard, and nothing else. He has Spell Pierce, that's not really a card. He has Oblivion Ring, doesn't really do anything. Timely Reinforcements, Pyroblast, and Thrun the Last Troll. So I think I like Richard's chances here. He's only facing three relics, and relic is one of the worst of the possible sideboard cards when it comes to fighting against Dredge, because the Dredge deck, while it can get its graveyard removed, can often just restock it again.
What do you feel about Relic in a Tarmogoyf deck?
I'm not a huge fan.
Relic in a Tarmogoyf Punishing Fire deck.
That does seem like an odd choice to me.
Richard's argument that he puts forth in his article is you almost always win game ones, and you usually win post-board games. As long as you keep your dredge deck pure, they will steal a game now and then, but because of just the math, you will tend to win.
Yeah.
I actually really like this sentence from his article. Nobody likes Dredge, they don't like testing against it, they don't like thinking about what to board against it, and they really don't like losing to it.
Yeah, it's definitely... Dredge is among the most despised.
Yes.
And here we actually have 2 of the most despised decks in all of Magic. Counterbalance and Dredge. Drink it in, people.
Woo! There's some cheers going on from our directors to the side, waving their hands about. Thumbs up from one. You know, this thing that he says in that sense, they don't like thinking about what to board against.
Yeah.
I really think that that's true. A lot of people put in their slapdash answer, and they're like, I'll just do this. And it's very similar to what we were talking about this morning with the mono red, where people are like, I will just do this.
Right.
And having an actual plan with how things fit into your main deck from your board really is important.
Oh, very important. And I think that, you know, a lot of people, it's exactly what we're talking about. They're like, okay, well, I'll just play this and I'll beat it. And a lot of times, you know, while cards like Graveyard Hate are very powerful against Dredge, it's very important that you actually know how those cards interact with what your opponent is doing. In particular, a card like Relic of Progenitus, you need to be aware of when it makes sense to use your Relic, when you need to, you know, be using your Relic to grind away one card at a time, when you need to save mana so you can Relic their entire graveyard. So it's something that a lot of people don't put in the time to learn because, as Richard says, it's not fun. It's just a miserable deck to play against for the most part. But I mean, it is a real deck. It is a very real deck. And if I recall correctly, Dredge actually won the Specialty Games Atlanta Open, which was the last event where I did commentary. And it's a sort of deck that sort of ebbs and flows because when it's sort of in fashion, people are prepared for it. They have a bulk of sideboard cards against it, but when it's not, people tend to, you know, say, well, I can skimp on Dredge Hate, there won't really be much Dredge, and then that's precisely when it rises up again.
You know, one thing Richard points out again, this is an old premium article, so now it's free, The Dark Art of Dredge Fu by Richard Feldman, highly recommended. He said that he went through him and Max McCall's tournament reports from Grand Prix Chicago, and they counted how many times their reactive sideboard cards made them win a game, and it was 0 times between the two of them, both of them making day 2, and I believe neither of them having 3 buys.
Interesting. Very
and
interesting.
so he was like, once he realized that the answers that he had for his opponent never made him win a game, he was like, you know what? Let's just not do it.
It's a very sort of irrational desire to not feel like you're just out of it. There's you know, a lot of people dislike playing in a game where they feel like they can't win. They're like, oh well, you know, if he has the ley line, I'm just dead unless I have this. It's like, well, you may have a chance if you do bring in these cards, but Richard's argument is that by bringing these cards, you make your deck worse in all situations where your opponent does not have that card, and you're making your deck, you know, you're often not going to win those games where you do draw it.
He said, not only did we play all these rounds with do-nothing cards taking up half our sideboards, but even worse, we were boarding them in. This is also just a really huge pleasure to read, by the way. He's a great writer. I'm sad that he had to become a big adult and get married and have an adult job.
So
Nick Becuar, I think, is mulliganing here, trying to find either an answer or a good hand. As in, no ley lines in his deck, but maybe he's looking for those relics.
I mean, Dredge is the sort of deck where you have to make very different decisions in mulliganing than you do against most decks. Your opening hand is very important. It's obviously very important against any deck, but the vast majority of cards in your deck don't matter. That's the crazy thing when you're playing against Dredge is you have Force of Will. Doesn't really do anything. You might be able to stop one enabler, but there's a good chance they have more.
Right. Force of Will is great if their hand is terrible.
Yep.
And if their hand is at all reasonable, then Force of Will is, I guess it's kind of like throwing a small stone in the way of a river. Now, I have definitely beaten Dredge with decks that were controlling, but it is really miserable, honestly. It's just such a miserable matchup when you're playing against somebody who isn't even planning on casting spells for the most part, and you have counter spells.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's the real thing about Dredge is that it can ignore most of the basic axes of interaction of the game. It doesn't really care about casting spells.
Yeah.
Doesn't really care about mana.
Yeah.
you actually there exist Dredge decks that have no mana in them.
Yeah. 0 ways to actually produce mana. It's like a Kobayashi Maru kind of thing. It's just like, who cares about the rules? It's just gonna
that Dredge deck that won the Star City Games Legacy Open event in Atlanta actually had no discard outlets. His plan was, I will choose to draw first and discard on turn 1.
I remember that.
It's just like, really? This is the world that we live in? This is a deck that can exist in Magic? This is unbelievable.
In one of the most powerful formats that exists?
That your plan is literally, I will not mulligan, draw first, and then discard. And then one interesting thing that from that tournament was that some of his opponents didn't realize what was going on and still chose to play first. Because if his opponent chose to draw first, he had to, every time on turn 1, just say go.
And we see Nick draws Island, lays it. Richard, a very strange opening hand. City of Brass, go. What do we see there?
Top. So Rich, I believe both players mulliganed.
Richard draws, shuffles his hand around a little bit. Cephalid Coliseum. I think we're going to have a double threat here. Tireless Tribe. Tireless Tribe, a 1/1. Discard a card to make it a +0/+4.
So I think what Richard is doing here, rather than playing an outlet on turn 1, is that he wants to play. He may want to play the outlet now, so that he can immediately actually, maybe I'm just misevaluating how this would possibly play out. If he had like a careful study, he'd be able to play it, discard immediately, and then careful study again. But I don't think that really matters.
He says go.
Yep. Well.
I think he says go. We'll see in a moment. And Nick presents the deck. We see a Sensei's Divining Top. Not 100% sure if this is in response to Tireless Tribe or at the end of Richard's turn. I see a counterbalance in there. Puts it on top. Untap. That was the end of Richard's turn. Nick untaps.
With a Spell Pierce.
I see counterbalance.
Richard's cast the one spell he needs to cast.
Richard untaps. During the upkeep, discards Golgari Grave Troll. 1, 2, and many more cards.
4, 5, 6. So
Icarid is in there, and numerous dredgers.
Yeah. So
he draws the Grave Troll.
While Richard would like to play something like a careful study to accelerate his dredging along, he doesn't have to.
Yep.
He can just play a long game and use his dredgers, just discarding them repeatedly to his Tireless Tribe, and grind this game out.
And remember, one of the things that Richard does not have to do. Oh, we're going to see a Cephalid Coliseum activation.
Active.
Oh boy.
Boom.
Cephalid Coliseum activated.
Coliseum, for those who are not familiar with it, is a land that when you have Threshold, meaning 7 or more cards in your graveyard, you can pay 1 blue mana and sacrifice it to draw 3 and discard 3. When you're dredging, that basically means you just put half your deck in your discard pile. 4, 5, 6, and then we're going to dredge again.
I see a bridge. I see a...
Another troll. There's a bridge, a dread return, and an Archamoeba.
And a...
3, 4, 5,
and then Cabal Therapy,
6.
bridge. Oh, this game's over. This game is over.
Yeah, unless Nick has a relic right away.
Oh!
3 bridges. Oh dear. Oh dear.
And now Richard resolves the triggered ability of the Narcomoeba and has a graveyard full of sauciness. It doesn't even matter if Counterbalance counters every card that Richard plays, because the triggered abilities of the bridges are going to just do
along with
hella
those
damage
Icarids in the yard. So
Yeah.
those Icarids are going to come back, and for those who don't know what Icarid does, it's a 3/1 haste creature that you can remove a black creature in your graveyard from the game to return it to play, and at the end of your turn, it dies. So how that works with Bridge from Below is that you just keep bringing back Icarid and just creating an army of zombies every single turn.
Now,
Nick with just hand on forehead is like, ugh.
Yeah, this is magic.
All right.
Now, one of the things I could not do if I were in Richard's shoes, I could not play Dredge all day. I would just not be happy.
Yeah.
I wouldn't enjoy myself.
And that's one of the reasons that it's actually a rational decision for a lot of people to not play very much Dredge Hate, because there are lots of people who feel that way. There are lots of people who just don't want to play Dredge. They're going to go play Legacy, and they're going to play the cards that they want to play with. I mean, even for myself, like as you were saying before, I'm probably going to play a deck with the cards I like.
Absolutely.
Because you can do that in Legacy.
I mean, as long as your deck is rational, you can absolutely do that in Legacy. 3 Bridges from Below in the yard, at least 2 Icarids. He's casting Cabal Therapy here. I'm pretty sure that Nick is going to reveal or scoop. Cracks a land in order to set up with the Sensei's Divining Top.
He's going to take a look at the top of his deck, and he can probably just counter the spell by flipping top if he wants. But
Richard doesn't even care.
Yeah, he's not casting Cabal Therapy in order to actually see Nick's hand. Nick doesn't really have many cards that can even potentially get him out of the situation. Even if Richard loses his entire graveyard next turn, he still has just an army of zombies in play, and Nick is under a lot of pressure to deal with them.
I mean, I think the best thing that Nick can do is somehow survive this next turn, get a Goyf into play, and a timely I can't even picture a way.
Punishing Fire a bunch of things.
I just don't even see a way out.
He is very far behind and does not have much that he can do to catch up.
I was trying to brainstorm one here, but I don't know. Even if Nick had a perfect actual brainstorm happen, I don't know if he would even be able to have the perfect hand help him now. Now, another element of Richard's deck that's interesting, you mentioned earlier, is that he has no actual real reanimation targets. He just has the creatures in his deck, the Golgari Grave Trolls and such. And his basic feeling is this: the mechanics of this deck will beat you.
Yeah, he doesn't want anything that can potentially gum up the works. He just wants his deck to be a zombie creating machine. It's like he's playing Innistrad.
It is. I was thinking about Innistrad with this, and I was like, they did not make anything like Bridge from Below in Innistrad.
They made Army of the Damned, but it costs mana, which is really no. It's 8 mana to cast.
13 zombies.
10 mana to flashback makes 13 zombies.
Yeah. The 13 theme is one of my favorite parts of Innistrad.
It's pretty cool. I like it.
Upkeep. We get a look. I see a Tarmogoyf. Tarmogoyf is big. He draws Grove. He draws Tarmogoyf. Good. I mean, it says go. Does he not know what's going to happen next turn? Oh my goodness.
Does he have a Glyph in his hand?
Yes.
I'm confused.
There's a Icarid.
I'm not sure what Nick's plan is.
I think Nick has given up.
It's entirely possible.
I mean, when I give up, I usually scoop my cards up when I give up. Dredge Grave Troll. Yes? Okay. Dread returns to the yard. Narcomoeba. Icarid. Narcomoeba.
Oh,
It's all coming up aces for Richard Feldman.
And he only really needs jacks.
Now think about this game, right? Richard on turn 2 cast a Tireless Tribe.
Yeah, the spell he has cast this game. Well, no,
Well, to be fair,
he cast
he-
Cabal Therapy,
but he-
which was effectively, I would like to put this creature in the
Yeah.
graveyard.
He's like, he paid the cost of Cabal Therapy. And
resolved
he didn't care,
one card.
He didn't even care about resolving it.
Yeah.
He just wanted the cost.
Right.
Organizes his cards to make them more legible. Can I attack you, he says. I'm coming in for 13.
No big deal.
I really do like watching Richard play this list just because the way that Richard does it, I don't mind when people's graveyards stretch out across the world, but he keeps things nice and neat. If you look at it, it's here's my zombies, here's my Narcomoebas, here's my Icarids. Nick Becuar playing with his poker chips over on the right. I mean, that's totally the chip move.
Yeah. It's like, all right, well, at least I have a chip and a chair. But you're going to need a little more than that.
Yeah, you need a deck,
6,
a
7,
brain,
8,
and a
9,
friend.
10, 11. So Nick goes down to 6. I think this might just be hopeless at this point. I think it may just be that Nick has nothing that his deck can do that
Yeah,
gets him out of
there's
the
13
situation.
damage coming in, actually. And,
that number is not going down
Yeah.
next turn.
I mean, what Nick would need is double Pyroclasm. And there is
All right.
one Punishing Fire.
Man, he had it. God, all right. I guess you win. You could kill a zombie. So he takes 10. Now,
He successfully resolves a Cabal Therapy, doesn't bother. And his Nick's like,
Yeah,
yeah.
Nick just concedes. All right,
it's
well.
over.
that was fun. Did you have fun?
I did, actually. I did definitely have fun.
So Dredge is a crazy deck, and definitely works.
Oh, look at Nick's